Well, let's get started. So everyone that is joining us this evening, welcome. And if you are looking for a wonderful evening experience talking about CBD and THC for new or newish users, you're in absolutely the right place. We have a whole hour scheduled for you tonight of interesting information that is practical, usable, and hopefully entertaining. I'm sure we could all use a bit of entertainment and fun this evening. So with that, again, our subject tonight is CBD and THC for new or newish users. I have just changed my screen, and hopefully no one was taken aback, but that is me, Jason Turner, who should be on your screen right now. I used to look like that pre-shelter in place. Now I think my hair is down to my waist and my beard is somewhere on my chest. I'm due for a haircut, and hopefully soon we'll all be able to get out and do that. But I am the co-founder and CMO here at 3 Wells, and I will be your MC for this evening. We have two wonderful experts that are going to be doing the bulk of the sharing of their experience this evening. And before we get into that, some quick logistics for the evening. So we have about 45 minutes of information, and we'll do some question and answer as well. I'll try and filter in some questions throughout the discussion, the presentation. And if and anything that's left over, we have 10 minutes allotted at the end of our webinar to go over those together. You can submit questions by opening a chat window and typing your questions in there. And as they filter in, I'll be able to see them and share them with everyone on the call tonight. This webinar will be available for replay at 3wells.co. There's the URL, and it's okay if you don't have to try and write that down. If you go to 3wells.co over the weekend, we will have the webinar up, and on our homepage, we'll have a nice, big, brightly colored ad unit that says, hey, here's where you can replay the webinar, so no worries. And also for tonight, a quick note of, I hope, common sense and just general precaution. We're not your personal physicians. We do our best to bring you great information and experts with all kinds of experience and well-trained experts, as you'll see in just a moment. We've brought you exactly that tonight. But we do encourage you to talk to your physician before you take any medicines or combine any medicines in particular. It's just good common practice, especially with everything we're all going through right now. So the webinar this evening is brought to you by 3 Wells and Wana Brands. We have come together to provide all this hopefully wonderful and entertaining content for you this evening. And for those of you that don't know who 3 Wells is, we are the only CBD and cannabis-focused website designed for adults 40 plus. Those of us that are 40 plus, we have slightly different needs, wants, and expectations from CBD, cannabis, all the cannabinoids and terpenes and everything that go in with that. And everything we do at 3 Wells is tailored for people 40 plus. News, information, and all about the products, everything is tailored for exactly that. And Wana Brands, our co-sponsor this evening, is the #1 edibles brand in the United States. And they are known and they're famous for their quality and their quality assurance. And that's really important nowadays because unfortunately there are some brands out there that aren't meeting quality standards. And I can tell you firsthand, because I do use Wana products, that they are absolutely one of the best in the industry and their quality is consistent. And you know what? When they say their products taste good, they actually taste good too. And their potency is consistent, which is fantastic. So they do have everything from capsules, edibles, to vapes, etc. And if you want more information, you can go to Wana Brands' website or you can go to 3 Wells. Both places will have everything that you need for information on Wana Brands. So I am very happy this evening to share with you two experts. We have Dr. Debbie Malka. Some of you may know her as Dr. Debbie, and that's how we refer to her at 3 Wells. She is our Chief Medical Advisor. And we also have Mike Hennesy, who's the Director of Innovation at Wana Brands, and he is a product expert. So he's rolling up his sleeves and getting into all the details of all the wonderful products that Wana is bringing to you. So a little bit more on Dr. Debbie, and I'll share also a little bit more information on Mike, because it's always great to know who the voices and the experts are on the other end of the line and make sure you know just exactly how fantastic they are. Dr. Debbie is a physician specializing in cannabis. She also has a PhD in human genetics from Columbia University. And I should mention she is an MD and a PhD, as I just said. And she has degrees from the University of New Mexico School of Medicine and the Santa Fe College of Natural Medicine. She's a clinician and an educator. And one of the things that I find really amazing in being able to work with Debbie is that she was part of and ran a group of clinics that saw over 300,000 patients. And it was all focused around cannabis. So you can imagine the firsthand experience, the practical experience that Debbie has, and she's going to be sharing that with all of us tonight on this webinar. And Mr. Mike Hennesy, he is the Director of Innovation at Wana Brands. He oversees the new product design and development, also educational and training content. And Mike, most recently, and actually we're going to get to hear about this, which is a brand new product that they're coming out with, actually in the market, I should say, in Colorado. It's called Quick. We'll get into that more. And really the amazing thing is what it does. And I won't steal Mike's thunder by going any further on that. And Mike is currently taking his Master of Program for Cannabis Science and Therapeutics at the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy. And he already has a bachelor's degree from the same university in environmental science and technology. And I will say, talking to Mike and working with Mike, great guy, and he's a heck of an outdoorsman. So who knows, maybe that'll come up today. And of course, he is Vice President of the Washington, D.C. chapters of NORML and the Students for Sensitive Drug Policy. So those are the experts that you're going to be hearing from tonight. And tonight, to get into really the heart of what we're going to be talking about together is this. This is what you'll learn tonight. That we're all going to start with some context setting, so some foundation, because we all have to work from a common foundation that gets us on the same page, so we know as we go through this exactly what the different references that Mike and Debbie are going to be making. So we'll talk about CBD and hemp-based CBD and THC, so we know that we're all on the same page. Then we'll move into what to look for to find great products. There are a lot of products out there, and some are great, some are not so great. So we'll be sharing with you how to navigate that to get exactly what it is that you need and what you expect. And how to choose what to take, because there is CBD, hemp-based CBD, THC, et cetera, and it can become an acronym minefield. And there are so many products out there right now, it's hard to make decisions. So using both Mike and Debbie's experience, you're going to be able to know what to choose or what to take. And then, of course, how much and what should you be taking? That's a huge question we get again and again at Three Wells, is how much should I be taking? So you'll learn all about that tonight from Debbie and Mike. So with that, it is time to dive in. And I am going to turn it over to Dr. Debbie, and she's going to set some context and foundation in the first section of our webinar for tonight. So Debbie, it's all yours.
Hi, folks. Welcome to our webinar. It's good to be with you. So we're starting with our own body because we need to know how cannabis acts in our own body, and that centers around a system called the endocannabinoid system. You see in the diagram a lot of little spots, and those are endocannabinoid receptor spots. There are many of them located in the central nervous system, but they are located throughout the body. So what is the endocannabinoid system? Well, that consists of these receptors, which actually were discovered because they bind to cannabis. But the question came up, why do we have receptors all over our body that binds to cannabis? Specifically binds to the cannabinoids in cannabis, such as THC or CBD. And what they found is that our own body makes our own chemicals called endocannabinoids that also bind to these spots. And it's very complex, but what you need to know is this is an awesome, huge self-regulatory system that all people have, all animals have, in fact, and it covers all of our basic endocrine, neurological, immune, and homeostatic and nervous physiology. So no wonder cannabis is such a potent chemical interaction with the body, because it binds to these sites. Furthermore, everybody has their own personal endocannabinoid tone, which means how active your own endocannabinoid system is, whether it's deficient, whether it's overstimulated, whether it's just right. And so different people have different needs for cannabis depending upon where they're starting with their own endocannabinoid tone. So that's basics ECS for you. And next we will talk about the cannabinoids that we find in cannabis. And as you know, cannabis its Latin name is Cannabis sativa. And cannabis sativa comes in many forms. Two of those forms are given here. One is commonly known as marijuana, and the other is commonly known as hemp. Legally, there's a definition that distinguishes marijuana from hemp, and that centers around how much THC, or tetrahydrocannabinol, we find in the plant. And it's very simple. If the percentage of cannabinoids, total cannabinoids, that is THC is 0.3% or greater, it is legally called marijuana. If the percentage is 0.3% or less, then it's called hemp, but it's the same plant. And the interesting thing you need to know about this distinction is that over the past 10 years or so, more and more and more varieties of low THC cannabis sativa have been developed. They're called hemp because that's a legal term, but really they've been developed to carry the full complement of all the other good stuff that's in the cannabis sativa plant, such as terpenes and alkaloids and flavonoids. So we actually now have access to the full complement of the medicinally active components of cannabis sativa. Whether they call it marijuana or hemp is a legal distinction, but we're no longer restricted for hemp to tall, spindly, fibrous, lanky plants that don't have any good medicine in it. So that is cannabis sativa as marijuana or hemp. And I would also like to point out there's a third category of product that's available that many of you might be curious about, and that's called CBD. You can actually get CBD in both of these categories. You can get it in a marijuana plant, you can get it in a hemp plant, and you can also get it as a purified isolate. And this CBD as a purified isolate requires different dosing than marijuana or hemp because it does not have the additional components of the plant that help it to be active. And we will say some more about that a little later on when we get to dosing.
So you've mentioned that there is all of these other things, the cannabinoids, the terpenes, all these other parts of the plant. When you say that, is that what we hear quite often as the entourage, and making sure we get the entourage effect? Does that play into what you were just talking about?
Yes, exactly right. So, scientists like to give very official names to very natural processes. And most botanists or herbalists know that the best way to use a plant is to use the whole plant, because plants organically grow with different parts that help it to be a balanced substance. So after you take the parts apart, like the cannabinoids and the terpenes, and you're a scientist, you say, oh, look how great it works when you put them back together. And they call it the entourage effect. It's not unique to cannabis. This is a concept used in botanical medicine all the time, where the full plant is usually more active than the components.
So if someone goes into the store and buys hemp-based CBD, it isn't going to have any THC in it, so they won't get any psychoactive effect, and they wouldn't fail a drug test. Is that a fair statement?
Nope, sorry, you got that wrong. There is some THC in a hemp extract. It's 0.3% or less. And if it's a hemp extract, unless it's called purified 100% CBD isolate, it will have some THC.
There you go. Because we get asked that drug testing question quite frequently. So thank you for clearing that up. So that's the foundational element. So let's move into what to look for to find quality products. So how do we do that? That's because there are so many out there. We really want to know, how do we sift the good ones out from the bad? And I really want to get into that next. So Mike, could you take us through your thinking on that?
Hi, everyone. And first, thank you, Jason and Debbie, for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here. But yeah, let's talk about quality products. So I want to state by saying it does not matter if you're looking for a hemp or a marijuana product, if you're looking for flower, joints, edibles, tinctures, salves, or even vapes. Really, there's some few key points that every consumer should be looking out for when they do buy a product. And a lot of this has to do with not only quality, but it's about being a safe product, a compliant product, and an efficacious product, which is what we're all looking for, right? So the first place to start is by looking on the labeling. Very clear, easy place to get started. And a quality product's going to have a label that will clearly state what's in the product. And I mean that by all of the active compounds and the inactive compounds should all be listed. Lower quality products don't always list ingredients. You'll see this more on THC products. And it's important to know that some ingredients can cause stomach upset, and tinctures that might have a high ethanol content can cause irritation in the mouth and the esophagus. So knowing what's in your product is the first place to start. The next really crucial thing we want to talk about is the total dosage. So how much is in the product? It should be very clearly listed right on the label. And not just listed, it should be verified by third-party lab testing. This means they took the product, sent it to a lab, and said, yes, the amount that we've put on the label is actually in our product. This is very important for dosing. The next piece is that not only do you want to know how much is in the total, but you want to see what the serving size is of the product. Is it one capsule? Is it 2 gummies? Knowing what the serving size is and what that dosage is going to be within each serving size. This is going to help you as a customer understand how much of a product you should be taking. And as a new user, you're going to want to err on the lower side of any serving size. So sometimes if a serving size is 1 gummy, cutting that gummy in half or into a quarter for a first experience, particularly on a THC product, is a really good place to start. And then the next thing you want to make sure that's on a label is a manufacture date, or even more importantly, an expiration date. This is very important because cannabinoids break down, they oxidize, they lose their potency over time, and other ingredients can go bad. So making sure that a manufacturer is complying with good manufacturing processes and putting an expiration date on there is a good place to start. The next thing I want to point out is the quality and the sourcing of the ingredients. This is true for all products, obviously, but particularly important when we talk about cannabis sativa plant. These are oftentimes not going to be found on a product's label, but it's a good idea to check a website or their FAQ page because most good producers are going to have this information listed there. So where is the cannabis sourced from? Cannabis is known to absorb lots of soil constituents, and using foreign hemp can result in contaminated product. We oftentimes recommend going with U.S. grown cannabis, U.S. grown hemp, or obviously on the THC side, from a licensed producer. Not going to black markets, going to somebody that has a GMP facility. The next is the quality of the ingredients. Are they all natural? Are they not artificial? Are there other things that you should be worried about there? And also understanding, are there other beneficial actives that might help supplement the endocannabinoid system? The endocannabinoid system is very interconnected in our bodies, and things like essential fatty acids can actually help supplement the endocannabinoid system. So looking out for the quality and sourcing of those ingredients as well. Many good producers are going to also list their growing standards. So how are they growing the cannabis? Is it done with organic practices? Are they using cover crops? A lot of them will talk about where it's coming from and how they're doing it. And that can actually really alter the way that the compounds in the cannabis plant are produced. So it's not only the strain or the cannabis itself, it's how it's grown can really impact what you're getting. Indoor versus outdoor is another important thing to think about. And then how is the product extracted? And I was watching some of the questions come through, and I saw somebody had a question about isolate, broad spectrum, and full spectrum. This is actually very important because how the product is extracted and how it's processed is how you're going to end up with a broad spectrum, a full spectrum, or an isolate. So to specifically answer that question, if you extract a cannabis plant and take all the oil, that's what you would call a full spectrum. It's going to have all the different cannabinoids that were grown by that plant. It's going to have the THC, the CBD, other minors like CBG and CBC, and it's also going to have your full terpene blends. Now, there is a process that you can actually remove THC from a full spectrum. That's called chromatography, and it's a chemical process that removes THC from a full spectrum extract. This is typically called a broad spectrum extract. So there is a way to get all the beneficial plant compounds with less than 5 parts per million THC. Not saying there's none, but generally you won't fail a drug test by taking a broad spectrum product. And then lastly, if you were to remove all the compounds except for a CBD or inversely a THC, that would be what's called an isolate. So knowing how it's extracted is going to affect what beneficial compounds are being delivered. So really a quality product is going to let you know, is it using broad spectrum, full spectrum, or isolate? As Debbie mentioned, if it's an isolate, it's going to really change the way you want to be using that product. And then last is not only are you going to have the potency listed on the label, but you're going to be looking for third-party lab testing results available likely on a website that'll give contaminant testing, pesticide testing, and heavy metal testing. This ensures products are safe, and it comes back to the question of where hemp is sourced from. If you don't have these tests and you don't know where it's sourced from, you could very well end up putting unwanted contaminants and chemicals into your body. And the last thing I'll mention is that with plants having different cannabinoid ratios, a good product is going to highlight what that ratio is. So you can see with the strawberry margarita, we're going to clearly put right on the front label that this is a 1-to-1 product. It's generally going to be the ratio of CBD to THC in the product. So quality products are going to let you know what that ratio is, and that's going to help you with your dosing. I'll add one more point before we move on, is that the ratio is independent from the dose. So a 1-to-1 product could have a variety of doses. So as you're looking at quality products, making sure that you're seeing the ratio and the dose at which you're working with.
So Mike, a quick question on the ratio. Should someone always assume it's 1 milligram to 1 milligram, or could that be 10 milligrams to 10 milligrams? It's just saying what the ratio is and not the actual milligram. And can you clear that up for us?
Yes, exactly. So a ratio is specifically just a percent of this to a percent of that. So if you have 50% this and 50% of another, that would be considered a 1-to-1 product. However, the dose itself could change. You could have 50% 1 milligram, 50% 1 milligram, or it could be 10 to 10. And those products are going to affect you very differently. So looking at those ratios, but also, almost more importantly, looking at the dose.
A couple other questions for you, Mike. You cited a lot of good things that we should be looking for as far as the quality of the product and what went into its manufacturing. And manufacturers can't put all that on labels on especially small bottles like this. Where do you think are the best places that anyone could go to do that kind of homework?
I would always start with a manufacturer's website. And another good place is that if you're in a dispensary, to ask your bud tender. That's their job, to understand the products. And don't be afraid or shy to ask them lots of these questions. Bud tenders love to know this information, and they're constantly asking us as brands about the product. So this is information we're always communicating to our bud tenders. The same goes for CBD stores, or if you're buying your CBD online, to really review the website and see all the content they have available there.
We have a general question, and this could be for you, Mike or Debbie, that these products that we're talking about, can you buy them without medical card?
I can answer that. So under the Farm Bill, all hemp, so again, that less than 0.3% THC products, they're available for sale in most states without a medical card for all consumers. Depending on your state, if you're looking to buy THC, It really depends. So many states are now medical, and you will need a medical card. States like Colorado, California, Oregon, and such, you can go in, but they're going to be in a different location than a medical dispensary. So those will be retail dispensaries.
And that's a very much state-by-state basis that anyone should be cautious and look up their state and see what is legal. Is that a fair statement?
No, you should look it up. There's a lot of very good resources. Normal.org is a great place to look at your own state's marijuana laws.
Thank you. Another question for you, Mike. One of our participants, our audience members asked, when you're portioning edible products, how do you know you're not getting too much in one piece while not enough in another piece when you're cutting them up or splitting them up? So you use the example of a 10 milligram gummy. So I'm going to assume, hey, if you're kind of splitting it down the middle and you're reasonably precise, is it safe to assume you're getting 5 milligrams and 5 milligrams? So is the THC distributed throughout that single gummy in an even enough way?
That's actually a wonderful question. So one of the founding principles that Wana got started on in 2010 was making a very consistent product. And so what we did is made sure that it's homogeneous. And so a good quality product's going to ensure the homogeneity of their product so that any piece of it has the exact same milligrams as any other piece of the product. So we're able to do this during the cooking process with a homogenation process, an immersion blender that is going to mix it all together. And part of the third-party testing lab results I was talking about, they actually do something called a homogeneity test. And so all Wana products are going to have a homogeneity test that comes along with the product. So if you cut it in half, there'll be exactly 5 and 5 in that gummy.
There you go. Fantastic. And availability, your products, are they all available in California, or some yes, some no? How does the consumer know?
The best bet on that is to go to our website. We update it live as we roll out new products to new states. Unfortunately, due to certain state regulations, as well as our own capacity to roll out products in a timely fashion, not all products are available in all markets. Some of that is to deal with the legislation, and other times it's just we haven't released it yet. Recently, last year, Wana did launch in California. We're now in 12 states on the THC side, and you can buy the Wana Wellness CBD products nationwide.
Well, one more question related to this subject, and then we're gonna move on, and that is, why is there not a lot of consistency with the labeling of what variety, sativa versus indica, that the edibles contain?
That's a good question. That's another piece that I think Wana started taking a long time ago, was that we like to list whether it's indica or sativa. And then all of our ratio products, so look at the strawberry margarita, if we do a ratio product, we're going to be using a hybrid strain in there. But other than our ratio products, all Wana products are going to let you know whether it's indica, sativa, or hybrid strains that were used to make that product. Why is it inconsistent? My opinion on that is that many producers take a shortcut, a cheaper way, and they distill off all of the other compounds in the plant. So they're working with a pure THC distillate. Once you've done that, you can use lower quality product and you can have a cheaper edible, but you're going to lose the strain-specific effects that sativa or that indica experience, with sativa being the more uplifting, cerebral, and the indica being the more relaxing, sedating body high. Hybrid's going to be right in the middle there.
Thank you. All right, let's keep going on our journey of new and newish users here. How to choose what to take? I mean, that's a big question. What criteria do I use? Do I use any criteria? What thinking and action should I go through to choose the right thing to take for what I'm trying to achieve? And I think, Debbie, with all of your experience in the 300,000 patients that the clinics you led went through, I'm sure you have quite a bit to say on this. So can you walk us through that thinking?
I have to say, actually, that this is a very simplified version of how to choose what to take, because a lot more goes into it. But for the sake of new users and knowing how to begin to approach this question, the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to go into a dispensary and ask the bud tender what to get until you have gone through your own checklist. So we have a checklist here, and you need to ask yourself these questions and try to come up with answers before you even go try to choose. So we'll start with, you need to know what you want to treat. This is more complex than it sounds. Most people think that cannabis is only good for getting high or treating pain or helping sleep or maybe, especially with CBD, treating anxiety. If you see a medical cannabis specialist, such as myself, or in many states still, you do have to see a doctor to get a recommendation if you want to use THC products. They're going to go, hopefully, they're going to go over with you what your medical condition or conditions are and how cannabis can treat that. So if you're not sure, if you have conditions that cannabis can help, it's really good to check with a specialist. For example, many people don't know that cannabis is really good for regulating your immune system. So if you have an autoimmune disorder, maybe like rheumatoid arthritis, somebody I see asked a question about multiple sclerosis, there are many conditions that cannabis can help regulate that you may not be aware of. So know what your conditions are and if cannabis can treat it. Secondly, people have personal preferences for whether they want the effects of THC or not. Kind of outside the scope of today's timing to go into all the effects of THC or CBD, but we do have some good articles on the Three Wells website that you can refer to for the effects of THC and CBD. But just for the purpose of this discussion, the reason that people try to limit their initial exposure to THC is because it can be disorienting, also known as psychoactive. It can also make you feel different in your perceptions. And some people are really okay with that shift in their consciousness, and some people are not. So you need to know how you feel about that. But don't give up, because you can regulate how much of that activity you get by your CBD to THC ratio. In general, your product can contain up to about 25% THC without really being psychoactive or perception orienting. I'll say that again. In general, your product can contain about 25% THC and 75% CBD without being disorienting. So even if you don't want psychoactive effects, you can still have a little bit of THC in your product. The next one's easy. Do you want to try it internally, or are you like really not too sure about messing with your own chemistry and you just want to put it on externally? That's topical. The next thing you want to look at is if you're going to be gone all day and you don't want to be redosing your medicine, do you need a long-acting effect? Or if you want to use it to help you sleep and you want to sleep 8 hours, do you need a long-acting effect? Or do you want a short effect for as short as 2 hours, see how it makes you feel, and then redose? So there are different products that are available for 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours. You can actually choose a product depending upon how long you want it to act. The next one is how easy is it to use? How comfortable are you with the delivery method? I think Mike's going to talk about them a bit. Obviously, smoking is not a really good idea these days, especially with a respiratory virus out there in the world. So even though many cannabis users have smoked traditionally in the past, that may not be the method that you want to choose. Also, if you have raw flower, then you can put it in a vaporizer, but do you really want to carry a vaporizer around with you? So these are things that bud tenders can help you with. The easiest thing to use is a pre-packaged edible or mint or something you just pop in your mouth, you know the dose, and that's the easiest thing to use. Last but not least is cost. And I joke when I talked about preparing this slide, which is really, that's first. When it comes right down to it, you can pick all kinds of great things that'll help you decide what to choose. And then you'll walk in the store and you'll say, yeah, but I only have like, $25 or $50 to spend. So that's going to really determine what you choose. So you do have to consider the cost. Most cannabis users consider cannabis as a supplement. They'll go in and they'll spend, $25 on a bottle of vitamins. They buy 2 different kinds of vitamins, they'll spend $50. And you have to consider cannabis as an alternative medicine that you're just going to have to pay for. So that's your checklist to start with.
Great. Don't go anywhere, Debbie, because the next big thing is, okay, we've got all these criteria and we figured, we're deciding on our products and let's say we are coming down to a few or we've already bought something. The next big thing is, how much do we take? So can you give us some guidance on how much to take of what in very general terms, respecting the fact that, there are a lot of specific cases of, certain people need certain things, but give us a general idea.
So it's really easy with new users to give you a general idea. It's so simple. If you're doing an inhalation method, like from a vaporizer, you start with 1 puff. It takes 10 to 15 minutes to come on. If you need another puff, then you do that then. But really 2 puffs should be your initial dose. With CBD, you can start with a low dose, which is considered to be 5 milligrams. With THC, if you're a new user, I would start with 2 milligrams. That's your starting dose for THC. Topicals, you really are regulating the dose by your choice of topical, where you're going to look and see how concentrated it is. But really, it's a light application to the skin, and you do need to reapply it in about 4 hours. Last thing about initial dosing is, do try to avoid concentrates unless they're regulated, as in a vape pen. Don't eat concentrates in your edibles. This is going to give you much too high a dose. And you start slowly, and the next day you use a little more, maybe increase by about 10 to 20%, and then evaluate your results. And then wait for the next day and increase a little bit more. What you don't want to do is take too much of your medicine, even CBD medicine, in an edible form where it can't wear off. Don't be taking your 20 milligram edibles, because it's going to stay with you for, 8 to 10 hours. So please start low and go slow.
Okay. So we have criteria to decide. We have general guidelines on how much to take. But there are so many different ways to take in, to ingest, whatever term you want to use, Debbie, for taking cannabis. Can you walk us through, and I'll bring all the examples up that we have of ingesting cannabis and some of the good, the bad, the merits of each?
I can do it. Smoking is definitely a favored method to get the full flower effect. You know that you have all of the components of the cannabis in the raw product. However, it's bad for your lungs, so smoking has some disadvantages. And it's fast, but we'll just move on from that to vaping, which is another way to get full flower if you use a full flower vaporizer. That's much better for your lungs. It's also a fast acting, comes on in 10 minutes, gone in 2 hours. And the other form of fast acting that you see on this page is a portable vaporizer, where they do use a concentrate, so it fits into a small container, totally looks like a pen that you can carry around in your pocket or your purse. So those are the inhalation methods. And then we have various edible methods, and there is topicals indicated here. But the edible methods Actually, Mike is going to go into some of the innovations that Wana has brought forward. But what I can say overall is that edibles in general, because they take 1 to 2 hours to come on and they have to go through your digestive process and they make metabolites, they're going to be active in your system for 8 to 10 hours. So they're very long acting. What we have in between is something called a tincture that actually is moderate acting. It comes on in 15 to 30 minutes and it's usually gone in about 5 to 6 hours. Tinctures are one of my favorite methods because you can actually measure small increments of dosing changes by the drop. It's very hard to do slow dosing changes with edibles because, you know, you have to eat a whole chunk at a time. But with tinctures, you can change by the drop. So those are your different methods to start with. And I think Mike's going to have some more to say about new kinds of deliverables.
Yeah, with the edibles in particular, you know, in talking with you, Mike, and others about edibles, there's quite a range, and there's quite a range of effect and ingredients and whatnot. And I think you used a great term with us, Mike, when we were talking earlier, and that is that not all edibles are created equal. Why? When you say that, what do you mean? What's happening in the edible and what's good or bad? Can you share that with us?
Oh, I'm happy to. So not all edibles are created equal. Well, I guess I'll say they're at least not created equal anymore. Really up until now, all edibles were going to be a very long-acting, long onset, as Debbie was mentioning. But Wana's now launched a new line of edibles, as well as Wana Wellness CBD tinctures that are going to act much quicker, a lot more like an inhalable experience. So really the way I think about it is we're bringing in technology into edibles. And we don't often think about edibles having a quote unquote tech, but there's some good reasons and there's some good ways that we can and should be doing this for certain situations. Before we get into the cannabis tech though, I think it'll be helpful for everyone to briefly understand why edibles and inhaled cannabis are so very different. So let's consider smoking a joint. When you inhale cannabis, the active compound THC, which its full name is delta-9 THC, it enters the lung, and along with the oxygen there, it's exchanged and delivered into our blood right away. So it's in the bloodstream in seconds, and it can go right to our brain and to the endocannabinoid system receptors spread throughout our bodies. Inhalation is thus very quick, it's effective, but as Debbie mentioned, the particulate matter, the concerns around respiratory illness that come along with smoke, it makes it not very good for our lungs. And this is one of the primary reasons edibles are so popular. However, so when you think about eating an edible, on the other hand, you bring it into the body, you begin to digest it in the stomach, and it's going to be absorbed in the intestines. And from the intestines, it's going to go through our biological filter, which is the liver, before they can get into the bloodstream. So whereas with the lungs, it enters our lungs and goes right into the bloodstream. When it enters through the intestines, it's going to go through the liver first. And here, that liver filter, it's going to change the THC, that delta-9 THC, and it converts it. It changes the molecule, and it turns it into a slightly different compound. This slightly different compound is nicknamed hydroxy-THC, and it has a very different effect on the body than when you inhale cannabis. It comes on much slower. It's generally a much more potent experience. And we all know it lasts much longer than its gentler precursor, delta-9 THC. I'm sure we've all heard of stories of friends, even news, or perhaps personal experience of taking too many edibles. And because of this change that happens in the body, it ends up being a lot more intense than we had expected. Also, this additional filtration that's happening at the liver can impact other cannabinoids like CBD, and overall it can sometimes reduce the entourage effect that we're looking for. So that's really a big difference between inhalation and ingestion of cannabis. So now let's get back to this idea of cannabis technology and understand how we can produce a product that's ingested and produces a similar effect to inhalation. Really, the key word here is encapsulation. So what we're doing here is we're taking that delta-9 THC and we're putting it into very, very small, like 100,000 times smaller than the width of a human hair, little teeny tiny containers. And you put the cannabinoids inside a little container. And what this container is doing is it creates a protective cover and it protects the cannabinoids from our body's filter. It acts somewhat like a Trojan horse. Our bodies don't recognize the cannabinoids. It's inside of, like the screen says, an eco-friendly package. This container is all natural. It's gross ingredients. There's nothing weird about it. It's basically made up of ingredients you would see in a normal food product, but it allows us to put the cannabinoids inside of the container. So because your body doesn't metabolize it the same way, it doesn't break it down into that hydroxy THC, we end up with a faster acting, less intense high that doesn't last as long. Something very similar to an inhaled cannabis experience. Another added benefit is that cannabinoids are not very soluble. That means that they are oily substances, and our body is mostly water. So they don't actually mix very well. And this means that they have a difficult time being distributed and absorbed by the body. But this little vessel that our cannabinoids are in, the exterior of it is actually looks like water to the body. It makes it more soluble, and the cannabinoids are more evenly distributed more quickly. So faster effects. This is not only faster effects, but this is a great product for a first-time user. We're not going to be smoking anything that could irritate the lungs. It's easily dosable because it's a homogeneous product. You can cut into the right size for you. It's going to have a 5 to 15 minute onset, so you're not waiting around. And this really reduces that chance of the it's not working syndrome and eating more of a product, right? So because you're not waiting around, you know it's taking effect. It also has a quicker offset. It doesn't last 2 to 4 hours. So you're not signing up for an all-day 8-hour experience, which can be a downside for many people. Now, a classic edible still is great for long-term pain relief, for when you want to sleep through the night. But if you have quick onset pain or some other reason that you want to be taking a cannabis product, this product is going to be a better thing to reach for. It's also less intense and a lot more controllable than a classic edible, which makes it perfect for new users. So what we've introduced is a line of Wana Quick. They're fast-acting gummies. So we're offering them in 3 different flavors: peach bellini, pina colada, and strawberry margarita. We do have a sativa, an indica, and a CBD to THC 1-to-1 balanced ratio. And every piece is 5 milligrams per piece. So that means it's also a low dose and easy to microdose. You can cut a gummy in half and take 2.5 milligrams and wait 30 minutes before consuming more. This is a great way to find the right dose for you. Start with a very small amount and add a little bit more until you find the right effect for you. Another great thing about these products is that there's no high fructose corn syrup in them, and they're made with organic ingredients. And in addition to these THC products, the Wana Wellness CBD line, we launched a line of fast-acting tinctures that also use an encapsulation method to encapsulate the CBD so that you can feel CBD more quickly, and that, again, it's more bioavailable, meaning that by being more soluble, you're delivering more of the CBD to the body. These products are now here in Colorado. The Wana Wellness products are available nationally, but we can't wait to take these to all the states around the country and let people experience truly a fast-acting, inhalable experience from an edible.
So, Mike, I got to tell you, true story. Someone very close to me, it was their first time with THC in an edible, and I said, "Here's 5 milligram." It was a 5 milligram edible THC that is, and I said, "You can have one, and then we'll wait an hour and see how you're doing, and then we'll see if you should take more." And I put the package down and I had to run an errand. And I went out for half an hour and I came back a half hour later and I noticed the package was open.
Uh-oh.
And this person had taken a total of almost 40 milligrams of THC. And I said, what were you thinking? Why did you do that? Well, I didn't feel anything for like 20 minutes. So I thought it wasn't going to work on me. And I said, oh my goodness, you're in for an unfortunate bad experience. You'll be okay. It's all right. But so my point is, wow, I wish that we had this, because that person didn't have the greatest evening. They're perfectly fine, but it was overload for them. So something like this, to your point, is great for someone who's new to it, and it can avoid that, oh, it's not working yet, and taking way too much.
It's so true. And we've heard those stories time and time again. And there is a good time and a place for a classic edible, but there's also a time and a place for a product that a new user can be introduced to cannabis that doesn't have to be concerned about that happening.
Well, this is great. I was happy when I saw this come on. I had no idea you guys were launching this until we started talking about this webinar. So I was elated because I have so many friends that are still new to it all. So
it's actually something we've been developing over the last 2 years, and we're thinking about even prior to that. As one of the leading edibles companies in the nation, we understood that there was a need for an edible that a new user could experience. And this has been a long project in developing this technology with our partners to be able to come out and finally release this.
That's great. Okay, we have had a heck of a journey, and we're coming close to the end of that journey, but we still have a couple more things that we want to cover, some questions and whatnot. But I'm gonna conclude, and I've made notes and put some things together here for this last slide in conclusion of everything we've talked about tonight. And there are 6 thoughts that Mike and Debbie and I really wanted to leave with everybody in the audience with tonight. And we're still going to get into questions, so don't go anywhere and don't worry. But to wrap things up as far as the planned content for the evening, the one thing is really use that checklist. We had one that was called out as a checklist, but you could also argue that, how much to take could be your little reference guide as well. But you can replay the webinar and write down or screen capture that checklist, because I think it really is valuable. The other thing is start low and go slow, as we've just mentioned, that 2 to 5 milligram range of THC in particular. And I shared a personal story, and I wish that person had heeded my warnings, but it's great that we have now a product like Wana Quick. But really don't rush into it. Enjoy the ride, enjoy the journey, whatever that may be, but ease into it. And next is adjust your CBD THC ratio. Remember that less THC means less psychoactivity. So if you're not after that, go low on the THC side. And remember the ratios that Mike had talked about, and taking a close look at those labels and what's in the product. And the delivery method matters, as Debbie talked to when she was going over smoking, vaping, capsules, edibles, etc. The one thing we really wanted to stress under with everything going on right now is, please, if you can at all, avoid smoking the whole flower, the raw flower, because it is hard on your lungs. Vaping, whole flower, and vaping with a pen is a better solution if you feel like you much prefer the inhalation method. And not all edibles are created equal, as we've already talked about. And so I think we've exhausted that one. And finally, we mentioned quickly about dispensaries. So look, there are good and bad dispensaries out there. Most of them are great. The real key is that will they take the time to talk to you? Will they give you good information? Are they patient with you? And are they listening to your questions and giving good answers, or are they just trying to sell you a product? If they're just trying to sell you a product, there are lots of other choices for dispensaries out there. Go find one that's really going to care about you, take care of you, and you could be prepared with your criteria, and that's really going to guide that bud tender in your dispensary. And walking in already thinking about or have thought about products and what you expect really makes you feel much more confident. I remember the first time I went into a dispensary, I was not confident, and I wish I had a reference guide like we went through tonight. So use that, and you'll feel better, and you'll get a better service and a better product out of it. So with that, I really want to get into questions right now, and I realize we're up against time. We are going to stay on a little bit longer to answer questions. So if you can stay on, please do so. And I'm going to get into the questions right now, and we'll let Debbie and Mike decide who wants to answer which, unless they're specifically targeted to one of them. So the first question here is, I saw an episode of Explained on Netflix that is about cannabis. Experts, in quotations, interviewed on that show said most strains are hybrid these days, and the idea of indica and sativa is obsolete. Are you, the experts, saying that that was just fake news?
The discrepancies in how they use the word cannabis sativa. Cannabis sativa is the Latin name for the cannabis plant. All forms of cannabis are cannabis sativa. So, next to that, we have sativas versus indicas. And it is true that most pure sativa strains have been hybridized, and it's really, really difficult to get a pure sativa strain anymore. But they're all cannabis sativa. That includes the hybrids, the sativas, the indicas, the CBDs, the hemps. So it's very confusing, especially for new users. I just really needed to say that.
No, thank you for that, Dr. Debbie. That is extremely true. The entire taxonomy of cannabis has been screwed up by a lot of mainstream marketing of cannabis strains. I guess I would just add that the idea of indica and sativa being obsolete, I don't fully agree with, but it's something to think about when you are purchasing cannabis strains. Almost every strain available in a dispensary is going to be a hybrid, but that doesn't mean that it's going to purely be a 50-50 blend of these two experiences. You can have 80-20 indica or 80-20 sativa. And when we are talking about a sativa strain, we mean that it heavily or somewhat leans in that direction. Strains that have the genetics of both would be considered a hybrid. And then I'll just throw this out there too, that I am an advocate of moving away from the terms indica and sativa and towards a term called chemovar, which means chemical variety. And that's a more scientific way of looking at the compounds in the plant and categorizing them based off the cannabinoid and terpene content. And I hope to one day help change that conversation away from indica and sativa and towards different chemovars. And that's actually one of the things I'm working on here at Wana.
Great. Okay. Thank you both. We had a comment here that someone totally agrees that less is more when you first start out taking too much THC products, especially. It can be scary. Yeah. Thank you for reiterating that. Okay. Next question. What data exists to prove its effect on pain, sleep, anxiety, inflammation, etc.? And I guess this is more toward you, Mike, does Wana help with these?
So I tend to shy away from making medical claims about our product. That's just due to FDA guidelines. I really don't think it's appropriate for myself as not a doctor and as a brand to claim that we're making any of these effects. That said, cannabis, you can do research. It's widely available online. There's many articles. If you Google cannabis and pain or cannabis and sleep or cannabis anxiety, it can help with these things. The endocannabinoid system itself is a regulatory system of the body. And so that's why it can help so many different potential calamities or issues in the body, is that it helps regulate other systems. You know, if you think pain, sleep, stress, and inflammation, these are all regular actions of the body. What the endocannabinoid system does is it regulates those systems. So by supplementing your diet with cannabinoids, you can help supplement the endocannabinoid system, is I guess how I'd answer that.
Okay, Debbie, did you want to add to that, or are we all good?
I can add to that. There are literally tens of thousands of articles, scientific articles that I have personally seen, if not read the whole thing of, that talk about the medicinal effects of cannabis and pain, inflammation. I mean, a lot of the things that I mentioned that it can do, it's really been proven that it can do. So this is not hype or untested medicinal action of a botanical therapy. It's really been tested and it's really been proven.
So I will add this, and I'm going to be very open with everyone on the webinar tonight. The government is very, very careful, as they should be, about anyone, whether it's Wana Brands or Three Wells or whomever else out there, making any claims specific to a medical condition in relation to cannabis, CBD, etc. So you're going to see a lot of caution, and it's because of laws that we're cautious about doing that. And we all try to give as best information, as close and tight information as we possibly can, but know that we're all under these very strict guidelines. I will say that a lot of the articles that we produce, actually all the articles that we produce that talk about anything about medical conditions on Three Wells, we provide at the bottom of the article or within the article itself, the source. So if you're reading an article at Three Wells, you can click on the links that we provide in there and see the source of the information on sleep, information, etc. So it's a nice quick reference for everyone on this call if you want to actually go back to the medical reports and the medical journals. We always do our best to provide you with the source information so you know what we're seeing and you can talk to the experts in the labs that have done that research. Okay, next question. What works best for complex regional syndrome when you cannot get a medical marijuana card in the state where you live?
I can talk to that. I've had many patients with that condition that do pretty well with CBD rich therapy. So if you're in a state where you can't get THC products, you can get hemp products. You can get your 0.3% THC. That's not very much, but CBD goes a long way to treating neuropathic pathology. Now, I say that very carefully because CRPS has a lot of neuropathic pathology as well as neuropathic pain. Your CBD-rich products are not going to treat the pain, but they're going to treat the pathology, which means you have to be patient and you have to wait 6 months to a year and stay on your CBD medicine for at least that long. I just want to throw out there that these kind of underlying chronic conditions that are treated by cannabis, these take a long time to reverse or turn around. And if you're looking for a quick fix from a botanical medicine, unless you're looking for a change in perception, which comes from THC, you're not going to find it. You have to give your cannabis medicine a long time to be active, especially for reversing neurological pathology. 6 months to a year.
Next question, topicals. And this is probably more for you, Debbie. Please elaborate on topicals. What are they good for?
Okay, really quickly, there's kind of two different kinds of topicals that you want to consider. The ones that stay active in the dermis layer or the outer skin, or the ones that get through the skin and get into the underlying tissues. So for skin conditions, you want topicals that stay in the skin, like dermatitis, eczema, psoriasis, hives, skin cancer even. So you want topicals that stay in the skin to treat skin conditions. That's pretty simple. If you want to get to the tissues below the skin, then you want to make sure that your topical has something that'll help it enter and penetrate through the skin layers. Like if you want to get to the joint pain underneath your skin and your elbow or your knee, you need to have a topical that actually has components or solvents that help it get through the skin. We need to do another kind of big discussion on topicals because there are many different components that can help you do that. But that's where you want to ask your bud tender at the dispensary which topical to get.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. I think we have time for two more questions. It's getting late. I'm glad everybody's staying on. We have a lot of people that have stayed with us. I got one for you, Mike. Are there potentially harmful side effects to the liver from edible cannabis products?
To the liver, as far as damage, there's not been good evidence to show that. But I do want to caveat and say part of the reason the FDA is holding on approving CBD is actually liver studies. So there's a class of enzymes in the liver break down cannabinoids. This is what's happening when you consume an edible. And someone here is actually listed. It's called the cytochrome P450. In general, about 60% of all drugs are processed through this enzyme group. So if you're taking prescription medications, you definitely want to make sure that, well, anyone should make sure they talk to their doctor about consuming cannabis, but particularly prescription medications, because what you could do is by consuming cannabis, you're using up some of those enzymes that should be breaking down a prescription drug. So while there's not liver toxicity that can happen, you do want to be mindful of the products that you're consuming, and as well as what other drugs you're consuming alongside them.
For new users, at the doses that you're using, which is 5 milligrams, even if you use it 3 times a day, that is not enough cannabis to interfere with your cytochrome 450 pathway, to interfere with your drug metabolism. So you don't need to worry. It's only people that use high amounts of cannabis or CBD that have issues.
Okay, we have gone about 15 minutes over, and we've answered as many questions as we could. I apologize for any questions we didn't get to. We did our best. There were so many good ones. And with that, I first and foremost want to thank Dr. Deborah Malka, and Mike Hennesy for your expertise and answering great questions and giving us some great information. So thank you both. I learned a lot, and I thought I knew quite a bit, but hey, it's always I'm always pleasantly surprised when I learn new things, and this is fantastic. It's been great. So thank you both for the time that you spent and the expertise that you've shared with everyone tonight. And lastly, so you know, the replay is available at 3 Wells, and it will be on YouTube as well. And you can get more information about Wana Brands on 3 Wells, or you can go directly to the Wana Brands website. And also, we have 2 upcoming webinars. One, the date we've secured already on May 12th. We're going to be talking about CBD, cannabis, and anxiety, what to do, what to take, etc. And then another webinar that we have coming up probably a month after that, we haven't closed on the date yet, is pain management through CBD and other cannabinoids. So with that, I will wrap up for the evening. Thank you, everyone that has attended tonight. We appreciate it. We hope you've learned a lot, and that you will continue your journey and have a pleasant experience with it. And come back and visit us at 3 Wells, because we're all about being well, living well, and doing well. So with that, thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.